Oh, that's me press the wrong button. We'll start again. Hello and welcome to Blockchain Gaming World episode 73. I'm your host John Jordan, and with me this week is Jeff or Jihoz from Axie Infinity. How is it going?
Yeah, it's going really well. Thanks for having me.
We originally planned this podcast for back in March, and it didn't happen. But actually, fortuitously, it's happened probably at the best time that we could have chosen to do a podcast about what's going on in Axie Infinity, because you've had a pretty crazy week. Before we get into that, though, let's have a quick overview into how you got into blockchain.
Yeah, a lot of my friends who are really smart were interested in Ethereum and smart contracts. I started doing some research, held a little bit, but it wasn't until I learned about non-fungible tokens through CryptoKitties that I got interested in kind of carving out a career in the space. So I just became an early member of the CryptoKitty community, met a lot of really interesting people, and things kind of snowballed from there.
That was very in a nutshell. Good. So Axie Infinity was actually, it wasn't just you who got involved in CryptoKitties. That was the genesis of the whole kind of project, really, as far as I understand it. You were all pretty heavily into CryptoKitties and then realised you wanted to do something a bit more, or do your own thing. I was going to say a bit more advanced, but maybe that's not fair. But you wanted to do, take those tools and do something yourselves.
Sure. Yeah. So Alex and Trung also... so who are also on the Axie team. We met through CryptoKitties, and I think CryptoKitties was an interesting proof of concept. We thought that there was potentially a lot more work to be done around actually a complex game, a complex fun game, but that also kind of had these strong economic principles and was to a point community driven. So,
do you want to quickly explain what Axie Infinity is for people who don't know?
Yeah, sure. So Axie is a digital pet game where you can battle, collect, and raise these cute fantasy creatures called Axies. We currently have a mobile and desktop application out in alpha, and where you can battle your Axies in a kind of card-based battle system. We're also currently working on a land system, which I like to think of as kind of a mashup between something like Pokemon and Stardew Valley or Farmville. So basically, you'll have these pets; they'll live on land. You can build different structures using resources that you've harvested. And I think one thing that will be interesting is we'll actually be dropping tokens through the land system. So I think that'll be an interesting kind of play on the recent yield farming. So actual kind of actual token farming through a fun game. So very excited about that.
And I guess what's interesting to me has been someone who's kind of lightly kind of interacted with the game and the community, is that you I think are the best example of a blockchain game that started off fairly kind of what we might call like a thin slice. So you basically had Axies, you could breed them, you could do kind of an automated kind of battling system, and that was at the time start mid 2018. That was already one of the more in-depth blockchain games. So you kind of had that, and then you've had this vision, and I think the vision is kind of you've broadly stayed the same, but kind of things have changed in them as you've gone on. And really over that 2 year period, you've kind of quite steadily been building out these kind of new features. And as you say, there's like a mobile version now that has the kind of battling, and you've had the land system, and we did the land sale a while ago now, and but then you can kind of see how these things are slowly kind of coming together, and I think that's often I think with blockchain games, there's not a lot of visibility about what they're going to be, because there's so much focus on let's get people, let's do a pre-sale now, or let's get a sale now, and our game's brilliant. And clearly the game's not brilliant, and the developers have a lot more to plan, but they don't necessarily want to share with the community, or they don't want to share with people what this is a long-term vision, because I think that they think that kind of muddies the water. And I think you've been quite good at kind of balancing those two things of this has got to be quite fun now, but it's going to be it's going to be 1,000 times more fun in a year or 2 years time, or 10 years time, I guess you hope.
I think that makes sense, and thanks for the compliment. So I think the way that we view blockchain game development is, we're kind of rolling a snowball, right? And I think Axie has always kind of, yeah, I think been known as one of the stronger communities. I think that's because we give them actionable things to have fun with and bond with each other now, while driving them towards a kind of a something like a 5-year vision. So yeah, I think I think our approach is to always be growing gradually, and to have that growth compound over time, which I think is a strategy that's more similar to what you saw with Ethereum, where they actually had a launch, and it's been constantly improving over time. So I think it's a little bit different than a mainstream game launch, where it's like you work on it and then you do a big marketing push with the launch, and it's like, and it kind of either fails or booms from there. So I think our approach is more build out features alongside the community, and to kind of compound growth over time.
I love the idea of compound growth. That's was it Einstein who said one of the most powerful concept in human history or something? Compound growth. Absolutely. And the problem though with compound growth is that it's very. I think it goes against our human nature that we kind of want everything to be massive now. That's to be just keep doing the same thing. Just keep doing good things in little steps. Then that'll in 2 years' time you'll have this massive thing. I think goes. It's very hard for a human nature to kind of kind of educate or kind of discipline itself to take that as an approach. And we're going to move on to something that was the exact opposite of compound growth that's happened over the last week. So small love potions. Before we get into kind of what happened, can you explain how small love potion actually fits into the game?
Sure. So basically, small love potions were added to the game as a means of Axie population control. So small love potions are required to actually breed Axies. So this ensures that the people or players actually need to earn the right to breed by interacting with the ecosystem. This we as we mentioned before, we were CryptoKitty players, and with CryptoKitties, all you had to do is, as long as you had a certain amount of ETH, you could just basically keep breeding them, and there wasn't really any kind of method of population control. So yeah, so these love potions were added with the launch of our alpha test. They can be earned by winning arena matches or progressing in adventure mode. And yeah, they're required to breed Axies. They're a very simple utility token. Breeding Axies is the only thing that they're used for. They're within that the Axie ecosystem, or officially kind of endorsed by the Axie team. Like, that's the only thing that they'll ever do. Although some third party websites have allowed people to list Axies in SLP, or small love potions, but I haven't really seen too much traction as with SLP as a kind of means of exchange. So yeah, it's just a simple tokenized potion, and yeah. So I guess that answers the question.
It's interesting that originally you even before you had that, you had a mechanic where you actually had to earn XP through battling in order to breed. So you've always had this very strong kind of idea that you wanted to, kind of get people to be doing things in the game in order to breed rather than CryptoKitties. Which, to be fair, I think there's a lot of criticism of CryptoKitties, and it was just an experiment that got very big very quickly. It wasn't necessarily something that was particularly kind of well thought through. It, and actually, it's interesting that now with 2 million CryptoKitties out there, you have that in itself becomes a feature that people now have wrapped CryptoKitties as a token exchange. So there's lots of things you can do. Anyway, waffling on. So small love potions kind of came out. And obviously they were useful for people in the Axie community. And when they launched, because they launched with the when this kind of mobile alpha went live, so there was quite a lot of activity around them, and then it kind of died off a little bit. And the price, because everyone cares about the price of a token. I'm just checking. The start of Monday, the 6th of July, we were 0.005 US dollars. What's that? 5,000th of a dollar. And then how did it feel like to be on the inside of a to the mooning kind of pump?
Yeah, well, it was kind of strange. As soon as we saw the price going up, and we saw people posting about it on 4chan, we were myself and a couple of our team members, and even from the main Axie Twitter account, we were very quick to announce that small love potions are a breeding potion. or a token that's pure purpose is uh, breeding Axies. It's not a governance token like comp or a value accrual token like with synthetics and Kyber network crystals. So we were very quick to point that out. But yeah, it's certain things kind of take a life of their own, and continued to go up and cause some pretty interesting things in the ecosystem.
Yeah. so yeah, as you say, it just seems to be a I don't know if we can kind of find a ground zero for the people who decided they wanted to pump it. But there was, I guess, as you say, broadly in the DeFi space at the moment, we've got this kind of idea of yield farming where a whole bunch of kind of financial dApps are putting out tokens which may or may not have cash flows attached to them, and people get them through doing things in those apps. So in a sense, very much like kind of small love potions, but from these much bigger dApps. So this idea that people are trying to find things that are going to go up in value and get more of them effectively for free. So I don't know if it's similar. We had kind of Dogecoin going through a TikTok inspired kind of attempt at pumping as well.
Yeah, it was interesting that that happened at the same time.
But anyway, you got up very briefly. Smaller potions got over to 20 cents on the dollar, so fairly substantial kind of increase. And then with all these things, it's kind of drifted away since. Although it's still up. Let's have a look. We're still up. Oh, I say we. It is still up, getting up to 300% over the 2 week period. So I'm always I'm always kind of think it's a bit dangerous, these kind of pump and dumps, because obviously the people who are vaguely in control of these sort of things are the ones who kind of cash out and are happy with like a 200% kind of profit, and the people who left kind of holding these horrible I lost 99% of my value are the people who kind of come in at the last minute. I mean, it's that degree, kind of very much a Ponzi scheme. But what's interesting is the value is still up, and it doesn't look like it's going to go down any further. So that's obviously good for Axie Infinity, I guess, in the long term, that one of the things you can do to earn in the game is now more valuable.
Sure. So I think so. The way that I see SLP is, small love potions. I see it as an interesting experiment. Like, what happens when you tokenize an in-game resource and allow your players to earn it by playing the game? Does that create like a kind of a UBI of sorts for Axie players? And that's basically been true. Obviously, the price has affected what the level of that UBI for now. And yeah, I think it opens up, now that proof of concept has kind of spawned various ideas and takeaways. I think that opens up further design space in the future.
Okay, good. Just point out, so UBI is universal basic income, something that various governments have been, people have been kicking around the idea, the concept for years, and obviously with COVID, seems to be becoming a bit more, or being attempted by various places, at least for a certain period of time, if temporarily. So, yeah, so just a brief insider. So on my side, what was interesting is I did have some small love potions because I just bought some, and I had them in a Uniswap liquidity pool. Because that's just normally what I do with, if this is a blockchain game out there, I buy some, and they have a token. I buy some tokens and stick it in a Uniswap liquidity pool, just to one, it provides kind of utility and helps people kind of trade in and out, and I think it gives it an interesting kind of you pick up interesting kind of signs about whether a project in the long term is doing well from that. But the reason when I first saw the small love potion kind of pumping, suddenly my Axie Infinity small love potion liquidity pool, which had been losing me money, I should say it's a very small amount, about $100 or something. It had been losing me, a few tens of dollars. Suddenly was up to about $1,000, and I was like, "Whoa, what's going on here?" That was kind of interesting to be on that. And actually, I did think, "Oh, should I go and sell some?" And then I was like, "Well, it's not that much money, and two, how can you have to? It's complicated to get it out, and the gas prices are high, and then you're selling and you're removing liquidity from the pool anyway. So that's not good for people. So in the end, I didn't, and I'm glad I didn't. So that was interesting. But going back to this kind of universal basic income idea, you've also not the only game, but you've been one of the kind of games to talk about kind of play to earn in that kind of context, and that is obviously you can play Axie Infinity with your Axies. You win some of the small off potions. You can then sell the small off potions for ETH. And then obviously you can do other things with ETH in the blockchain, in the ETH ecosystem, or if you wanted to, you can kind of cash it out. So I wonder, do you think this is something that now? Because to me, it's always I always understand, with blockchain, the whole point of them is you can kind of you can accrue value by doing things that in the non-blockchain world you couldn't accrue value, like actual financial value with. But I wonder how useful, or for me, I wonder how confusing the term play to earn is, because earning is obviously broadly or very different depending on where you are in the world. So someone in North America or Western Europe, the idea of play to earn to me has slightly different connotations to someone who would be in a developing country. So is this just something that's a bit of a kind of marketing kind of tag that, or do you think in the long term that this is a more useful kind of financial instrument, a bit, actually providing people with the ability to earn decent sums of money?
There's some distinctions, right? So I think that there are very different types of stakeholders or players within the ecosystem, and they have different goals, and so there are people who just play Axie for fun, and love to collect their Axies, expand their collection, just hold them, and probably might never intend on ever selling them, right? And I do think that those types of players are important for the ecosystem, in the long run, right? There has to be a fun game. There have to be certain activities that people are willing to just spend money on for enjoyment. And I think that is one of the ways that play to earn is subsidized. And we're also seeing, I think we're the only project or the first project to really get kind of sponsors in, like the Maker Foundation and Kyber Network, where they're just giving us tokens, which we then distribute through our game. And I think that something like that is a potentially more a sustainable direction for play to earn in the long run, because you're not requiring new users to come and inject money into the ecosystem to increase the earnings of the current players, right? That's just new capital being injected for marketing purposes and things like that. So I think generally what I'd like to see is for for blockchain games to build up these big networks of players, and then have sponsors come in and say, there used to be the ICO airdrops of the 2017 era, right? I think a new iteration of that is to drop your token within a game and attract new stakeholders and proven DApp users to your ecosystem. And then I think there's also the North Americans. A lot of them are very interested in the high grade assets within Axie Infinity. The Mystic Axies, which are supply capped, and if the game does well, it could become highly sought after collector's items.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. It is this even within, say, the kind of a certain the kind of more the developed world, there are people who will play or be involved in Axie Infinity will take different roles in that, and they all have kind of different views on kind of what value means. And so even there might be some people, might be people who find kind of yield farming to that degree, playing Axies a lot and getting $20 a month. Obviously not. That's there might be something useful for them, maybe kids or something. Whereas there's other people who don't. $20 a month doesn't really matter to them, but if they can sell their Axie at some point, a very rare one for $1,000, then it's those very different. Those people have very different views on how they're earning money. But you need to encapsulate them all. I think that's actually one of the hardest things in blockchain games is to encapsulate these very different, certainly geographical views, and also these very different ways in which people want to kind of create value and interact with the game. Because I think that's hard to do in a traditional game where you have the super hardcore who are going to play all the time and spend a lot of money, but also you want a bunch of kind of more casual people who still enjoy it and still enjoy the interactions and don't get beaten all the time. And that's hard to do. I think blockchain makes it doubly hard, squared hard, to kind of because you suddenly put financial value into that. Okay, so Smaller Potions did its kind of weird thing, but if we look at the Axie Infinity and some more, kind of, I like data. So you just put out a good email that says something about the data around what you've been looking at in terms of kind of users of the game, and kind of your community as well. So do you want to kind of just run through some of that? Because I guess in the long term that's more useful. Yeah, the small love potion price, in a sense, is kind of irrelevant to, or in a sense, will be driven by your actual community and what they're doing.
Yeah, definitely. So I think one of the things with the recent interest in the ecosystem is measuring what positive long-term effects it potentially had. So there are different ways to look at that. So yeah, as you mentioned, we just put out an email mentioning that there were over 750 new downloads of the alpha application last week, which actually represented a 15% weekly increase in the install base. We had 600 new people join the Discord. The number of Axie holders increased by around 350. And then on our on-chain activity, increased quite significantly. And we also saw that the total weekly volume for Axie assets, so that's Axies, land items. So not really tied to SLP, skyrocketed from around 22 ETH the week prior to around 400 ETH. So I think what we saw is that there was a lot of interest. Some people if we're finding out about Axie for the first time and decided to take a look at it. And what we're seeing internally is that the number of players interacting with the app actually doubled and is still hanging around double from where we were prior to the SLP event. So yeah, I think it's very interesting in that we saw that we can basically use a lot of attention around the token to actually kind of capitalize on that and turn that attention into actual traction for our products. So I think so I think that is a model that so obviously it's being tested in DeFi right now with the yield farming comp, for example, giving out their governance token for using their platform. I think that that's something that different NFT applications will start to experiment with in the future. SLP, it was interesting that this happened because we actually suspected that something like this could happen, but we didn't expect that SLP would be the token to do it for us. We actually do. We have previously announced that we'll have a native token. Right now it's called Luna, and we'll be introducing that in the future and allow people to earn that by playing the game and interacting with their land. So I think that this bodes well for Luna, which will be kind of more of a native governance token for Axie.
I think in some ways this kind of shows the advantages. Maybe advantages is the wrong word, but it shows how games are different to something like a DeFi DApp. Because obviously DeFi DApp, there may be community around those kind of things, but I don't think there's a very strong community around kind of compounds. I'm sure there are discords, but it's not like a game kind of Discord group where they're really fanatically going on about it. And so these kind of things like the comp token, you basically get it for using compound. It's basically like a competitive thing. Don't use another kind of DeFi DApp for your savings and borrowings. Use compound because you get this compound stuff for free, and that's kind of it. If the price of compound goes down, so it's not efficient, then people will just go off and do something else. Whereas I guess with something like a game, you go, I didn't know about this game before. I got into it for whatever reason, like a price pump or a yield farm sort of thing going on, and then I got into the game. And I found this was really interesting, and I, was in the Discord, and then you can. So that to me, that's much more exciting than anything about a token. Is games can actually capture that attention and do something much more valuable in the long term for themselves to build an audience, and also for the users who just basically find a game that they really, hopefully can, really enjoy playing, and they can find a community they can love, and So for me, the most interesting thing here is you got 358 new people who didn't own Axies at the start of the week, and then went and bought an Axie. I mean, that's massive validation, I think, of what you're doing.
Yeah, I think so. The way that I see it is, I believe that community is, there are around 18 distribution channels if you kind of want to list them all out. And community broadly defined is kind of one of those buckets. But I think that community especially for a DApp, is the most important, because I think it can amplify all other channels. So while we had all this attention coming in, all this press, we have this Discord that we're able to funnel people into, and they see how happy and excited and nice the community is, and they inherently kind of are drawn to it and want to be a part of it. So I think that was a big validation for us, that as long as we make sure that the product is fun, and we draw the right types of people to the community. So later on, as we start doing bigger product launches, and more of a marketing push, I think our community will really be instrumental in kind of maximizing the effects of those actions. So yeah, I think it was really interesting. And yeah, I think you made a good point about how in DeFi, right, with these DeFi protocols, there's very little loyalty, right? Like, you kind of capital is always just seeking the highest yield, for the most part, or potentially. So there may not be like a lot of brand loyalty or community loyalty among the comp holders, whereas yeah, with an NFT game, people make friends, right, and become quite close to each other.
We kind of briefly kind of talk about the sharding of Axies. So again, this is, I guess, something that goes to the advantage of blockchain, of being an open kind of platform that people can kind of do what they like with these assets and put them into new dApps. So without going into massive detail, there is a new platform called Niftex. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but it's interesting, kind of fairly experimental, I suppose, where you can take an NFT. Obviously, a high value NFT, it kind of makes sense, and then you can shard it, basically break that down. You can take half of it. I think obviously you can't. It's 49% of it, because obviously you have to keep majority ownership. But you can take a percentage of that high end NFT, break it down into shards, effectively turn a ERC 721 NFT into ERC 20 tokens, not fungible tokens. So like any other Ethereum based token. And you can sell them off, and then people can trade these tokens. So it's kind of what would we call it? Fractionalization, to use a kind of a posh word. Fractionalization of NFTs into ERC20 tokens that then can be kind of obviously speculated upon. Really, that's in some ways, I guess the idea is people who have these very high value NFTs, that it's very hard to sell those, because there's not many people with that amount of cash or ETH who want to buy them. They can take some sort of value out of that by selling off little bits. And we had some people kind of well known in the community, Alex and Gabby, who also kind of make blockchain games, who they're big into Axie, and they had a fairly expensive Mystic, I think. I mean, I don't know exact details that they. But anyway, while all this kind of smaller potion stuff was happening, they were opportunistic. I think they were just experimenting. To be fair, they're not trying to make money on it, but they put in. I can't remember. Can you remember what the value was? Was it a 30 ETH one? Or I can't remember.
I think that they did the shard offering at 40 ETH, I believe.
Okay, and it went up to. I should know the figures here. It went up to a few hundred, didn't it?
Yeah, I think at its highest point, it was the total valuation of the Axie Almace, which is like basically an exclusive Axie, one of three, went up to around 300. So yeah, it was very interesting to watch that.
Yeah, and I guess that's in some ways, that doesn't really feed back into kind of what you guys are doing, but it does. I guess it does show the entire kind of blockchain ethos, that people can do these things with an asset, and obviously it reflects to some degree on the fact that these very rare Axies can be very highly valued. I mean, the price has gone down since, and say that they're not doing that for full financial gain, and they're doing it for their own interesting purposes, I think. But again, that's kind of is interesting that. I don't think there's many games you could do that around. I think Axie and CryptoPunk seem to be the only NFTs that are going through that sharding process at the moment.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think the narrative is interesting in that it kind of democratizes access to some of the the highest end NFTs, and unlocks liquidity, and theoretically there's now a liquidity premium. And we also saw some interesting. We saw our community members, because they now had the confidence that they'd be able to use this platform. They kind of pooled money together and bought another 30 ETH Axie, which they plan on doing a shard offering for. I believe it's tonight, actually. So it creates interesting behaviors, and Yeah, well, it's still very early in the experiment, but I think it's found some semblance of product market fit within the Axie community so far. And it's been interesting to watch. And it's also like I'd like to point out that none of this was arranged by the Axie team. This is all through a third party platform. And But yeah, obviously we're obviously supportive of interesting experiments. Brings it kind of showcases how the Lego blocks of the NFT space are kind of coming together.
And it is no, I mean, I don't really like the term democratization because everyone uses it for everything all the time, in a slightly kind of cat way. But I think it is nice that I think people you can understand that if there is a very high value thing that you can never own yourself to own like a 1% of it or whatever it is. You can understand psychologically that is quite valuable for people. I remember a long time ago, someone was telling me about like brands, so like Western brands, consumer brands, food brands or whatever. They're very valuable globally, but people maybe in some countries, can't afford to buy like a whole tin of Nescafe. So they make these very small, versions of it, very small packaging of the brand, and people psychologically like the fact that they can spend a little bit of their money and get this brand even though they're not getting very much, Nescafe or whatever, whatever the Western brands are, and it's a similar sort of thing. You can understand that why that gives us a psychologically kind of pleasant feeling, that feel like we are certainly stronger in the community and we own a little bit of this very expensive thing. So all good. We've not almost out of time, but we should be talking about should talk about your roadmap, because it is you have a lot of things planned. Can you kind of give us a brief overview of what you expect to be happening in the next kind of few months?
Yeah, definitely. So, I'd like to say also, like, I think our approach has always been to be very flexible and lean, and to kind of be transparent about what we're working on and to be flexible. But so right now, it looks like we're working on obviously polishing out the battle system for the application. Making it a little bit more intuitive, a little more fun, a little more fast paced. So that's one of the things that we're working on. We're also obviously working on our land system, so we've been putting out some development updates regarding that. So right now, working on the crafting system, the resource gathering, using those resources to build different structures, and then figuring out how the battle system within the land system also looks. So and so in terms of gameplay, we're working on polishing out the battle application, and then land. On the tech or infrastructure side, we have a newly announced Ethereum sidechain called Ronin. And so obviously, o- uh, over the last couple of months, there's been an increase in DeFi usage. There's been tons of Tether moved onto Ethereum, and it's been skyrocketing gas fees, and it's, I think, had a pretty negative effect on many blockchain games, as a lot of these transactions are not very high value transactions, so it doesn't really make sense to spend $1 on gas if you're making a transaction for $1 to $5. In most cases, no. So basically, we're looking to kind of address some pain points for our community by building out this side chain, and kind of running the majority of the Axie kind of smart contract related actions on top of that.
How big a kind of technical task is that? Because as you say, the until Ethereum 2 comes, which who knows? The gas fees have basically killed gaming on Ethereum over the last 2 months. They're down, overall activity down like 80%, more for some games. So we've gone through a few cycles of side chains. I mean, you guys were with Loom until Loom weren't doing games anymore, and we've had kind of the rise of Matic. There's a few other kind of more generalized solutions. I think I say it's always the risk reward for rolling your own tech. Is I think quite a hard thing for any teams to judge. But I just don't know how hard is it to do to build your own sidechain.
I think that our approach is for it to be quite lightweight at the beginning, and to kind of improve it over time. So basically, it will be at the beginning kind of a POA chain where we onboard validators with very good reputation from either crypto and the traditional gaming space. things like that. People who, so basically using their authority to back the chain, and people who would have no kind of real incentive, wouldn't have no incentive to kind of tamper with anything. But then over time, the idea is to make it more decentralized, more trustless, and so I think that those upgrades would be where the majority of the work and research needs to be done, because there's still a lot of question marks around basically a true layers 2 solution that works with ERC 721 in gaming. So we've seen the rise of things like optimistic rollups and ZK rollups or ZK sync. However, those are more for ERC20 and ETH based transfers, and they haven't really been specialized or kind of customized for ERC 721 yet. But that is something that we'll be looking into. So I guess the short answer is that we think our approach will be pretty lightweight, and to get something that works for our current community's needs. And then a lot of the more complex upgrades will happen over time.
I think that's it. I think we're done. We've covered a lot of ground, a lot of kind of quite complicated things going on there. So I will try and put links to the various things in the show notes. Obviously, link out to you on Twitter, where you're very much worth following, very very active in telling us what's going on, and links out to Axie Infinity. And thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks. It's been really fun and always great discussions. I guess this is our first public discussion.
Yeah, yes.
And so we're we've known each other for quite a while now, right? Going all the way back to that first competition back in almost two and a half years ago now or something.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And hopefully at some point we'll find ourselves in a exotic location somewhere around the world.
yeah. When all this is over, we'll grab a beer.
Yeah, good. And thank you, listeners, for listening to another podcast. Don't forget to subscribe if you've just come across this one through the power of the Axie social network. Every week we're talking to the people who are making the blockchain game space, and finding out more about what they're up to and why they're up to doing it. So please do subscribe through your podcast channel of choice. But thanks for listening to this one, and come back next week.